Hello. I was here about 1 year ago in the same situation. And after I came up here, we had the most glorious vacation. Start off 1 day here and then 2 days here, Monterey, and then 4 days in Disneyland. That's where we actually wound up. So I'm kind of interested to see what happens this time.
Well, it'll be better than Disneyland. And we're not putting that down. That's just old news.
But my question is clarity on inspiration. I get these thoughts that come to me and they're not overpowering, they're kind of subtle. And I want a way to make sure it's clarity of, is something I should follow or I should not follow.
Well, you see, when you're really in a non-resistant mode, you're not trying to make those decisions. Law of attraction is making them for you. Do you hear that? Don't try to think too much about it. This phrase will help you. Be the receiver of the thought, not the thinker of the thought. If you're thinking about clarity, then you're too in your own way. So just sort of back it off a little bit and let there be clarity in, this isn't quite the right expression, but let there be clarity in the smaller thought. Let there be clarity in the softer vibration, but sustain it long enough to let the momentum of it increase.
So basically you just keep thinking about it and let
So we have some questions for you. So would you rather have a simple, clear thought or a sophisticated, resistant thought?
a simple, clear thought.
Well, you're very wise. What do you think most of the world means? Most of the world would rather have a sophisticated, big-time, robust, let's think about it all thought, because that means I'm smarter. And that means I've got more going on. Feels like there's more dynamism in it. But what we're promising you is that if you start pure, it'll become robust and it'll become fast, but it won't tear you apart as it increases. So does that answer your question about how to allow clarity to naturally evolve? Just don't mess it up at its basis, and law of attraction will make it so. So as these thoughts are turning to things, what happens is this leads to this, 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 leads to this. And as the pieces begin to click into place, they almost take your breath away. It's like you realize after the fact how set up you were to receive that. Have you ever played the game, well, if I hadn't been there, if that hadn't happened, then that couldn't have happened, and then that couldn't have happened, and then that couldn't have happened, and then that couldn't have happened. Do you ever played that game where you can actually trace it back? Well, those are good games to acknowledge, because that's how it always is. There was always something before whatever happened. And as you start asking yourself, if what happened before was satisfying, then that's why this is too. And that's why this is too. And so if you start with a simple but satisfying premise, it's going to get bigger and faster moving and more complex and more sophisticated and more dynamic and more moving parts involved, and still be clarity. So clarity is about absence of resistance. It's not about speed of something. It's about absence of resistance. Most people, analogy we were using a little while ago, it's like you think about what you want, and it's like you're on a flat land and you are a train, and you put an engine going that way, which represents your desire, but then you put an engine going the opposite way, which represents your belief about it. I want this, but I believe this. So now you've got two equally powerful engines going in opposite directions, and you're not going anywhere. Well, when you don't go anywhere, most of you, it causes you to want it more, so you put another engine over there, which causes you to doubt it more, so you put another engine over there. So now you got four really strong engines, and that's the way a lot of people live their life until they're so exhausted that they just give up, and then the engines of desire carry them for a little while until they come back to sanity and begin shooting themselves in the foot again with their objective practicality. And what we're trying to guide you away from is your objective practicality. We want you to stop thinking so much and allow yourself to receive the thoughts that you've already thought, to receive the vibrational basis that you've already put into your vortex, to receive the maturing version of what's in your vortex, to receive the complementary cooperative components that the masters of the universe and all those that have gone before and all those who are caring about you, which is all of us, know about what you now want. If you had any idea how many of us are in on this evolution and expansion of your vortex, you'd chill more. You would. You'd chill more, you'd try less, you'd suffer less, you'd compliment more, you'd criticize never, you'd look for reasons to appreciate, you'd meditate every single day of the world and bring yourself into alignment with who you are so that you could start this day in the sequence of who you really are, you see. And then you could turn on your television and you could see all of those wonderful people having all of those step one moments. And you would bless every single thing that they're living because they're filling the vortex full of all of the things that you are now the receiver of.
I have my wife. What is the best way to help her become happier, I guess?
By wholeheartedly embracing the extraordinary number of step one moments she has in a day. Contrast is really serving her. While she's not, like so many people, understanding how to let it in, as you teach to the clarity of your example, she'll start getting it. So take your attention away from the things that feel like they aren't working. In other words, when you say, how can I help somebody be happier? We say, you can't. And we really want you to hear why. When you notice that they're unhappy, you're useless to that situation. Did you follow that? So the way you help her be happier is by imagining that she is, or noticing when she is, or not letting it matter when she isn't. Doesn't everybody have to have some step one moments? Is everything in contrast a promotion of happy? Are some things in contrast promotion of desire? Understanding how it all works makes it easier, and not freaking out. Consider this. So here we are all together. It's just never been better. Here we are all together. And there's so much attunement with who you really are that can't you palpably feel the well-being? So that's what's going on in here. Oh, and that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that people are worrying about, but that's predominantly what's going on. So it is helpful to think about what you bring to any meeting, to any physical gathering. What are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing your centeredness? Are you bringing the whole of you? Are you bringing your clarity and wisdom? Or are you bringing your worry and your fretting? The best example that we have of this, Jerry and Esther had purchased a piece of land and then another piece of land and then another one and another one. And it was land that ended up being 40 acres on Interstate 10 in San Antonio of really wonderful real estate property. And they didn't see in the beginning that that's where they were headed. And they were sitting one day on this 7 acres that was before the whole thing had come together. And Jerry said to Esther, can you feel how good this feels? And Esther said, I can. And then several years passed and they bought more property and they ultimately built some buildings. It's where their business offices are. Such a beautiful place as it came together. It almost put itself together, it would seem. And one day, Jerry and Esther were sitting at the end of this beautiful building in what they had assigned to be their office. And Jerry said, Esther, I just realized we are sitting in a building that is right on that spot that we first found and felt the energy of all those years ago. He said, would you mind? I'd like to talk to Abraham. And so Esther said, of course. She relaxed. Abraham greeted Jerry, and Jerry said, Abraham, was I feeling all those years ago the happy people who had lived here on this land? And we said, you were the happy people you were feeling there. They were picking up on the Vortex version, even though the manifestation of it had not yet come about. So, in the process of the gathering of this land, that particular property had an easement that went out the back side, and it wrapped around someone's tennis court and it wrapped around someone's swimming pool, and it was not a big enough easement that it could be utilized in any way. And it didn't really matter to Jerry and Esther. By then they had put enough property together that they had access to their properties all over the place, so the easement was not so important, but they were walking the easement that day just to see what it was. And a man who owned part of the property came over, and he was angry that they were walking back there, and they were explaining to him that according to their paperwork, that was their easement, and he was very belligerent about it. He didn't want that to be their easement, even though it was. And then another man joined, and then another person, and there was a sort of contentious feeling. And Jerry and Esther, they were just bipping along, living happily ever after, and they just wanted to see where the damn easement was. They didn't mean to start a turf war. But sometimes people are just, that's where they're at. That's what they're ready for. And so they were standing there, and Esther thought, there must be some way for this to work itself out. And then one of the men had a dog, a beautiful German shepherd, who hadn't come with him, and he came running across the field. And he came over, took stock of the situation, and immediately jumped in the swimming pool, then got out and started shaking all over all of them. Got everybody wet with a big-time distraction, and then began running circles around them until they were all laughing. And then everything was better. You just couldn't stand there with this happy beast who had come deliberately to wrap them all together and to show them that they were all in this together. That dog did not stop running around them until they were all laughing about it. And now they're slapping each other on the back, they're shaking hands, they're introducing themselves to each other and to the dog. It all lifted right off, and it gave Jerry and Esther an opportunity to say, this easement will remain just as it is. In other words, we don't need to do anything with the easement, just wanted to see where it is. And so what we're getting at is, well, you know what we're getting at. What we're getting at is that when you realize that well-being is always in abundance around you, and even though you might be in the middle of a conversation with someone who's not ready to receive, their desire for well-being is the most dominant part of them, no matter how they are presenting themselves to you at any point in time. No one intends to not feel happy. Everyone wants that. It is the basis of everything that's in everyone's vortex, and everyone has a vortex, and your vortexes are all collectively tied. So what we're asking of you is just to decide what part you're going to play. Are you going to be the dog that jumps in the pool and shakes happiness all over everyone and runs around them with your antics until you convince them that well-being really is dominant? Or are you going to be one that stands off and points out the things that are wrong and adds to the discontent and the unrest? Because you get to choose in every moment, and every moment is a manifestation. And in every moment of every manifestation, you have the option of how much of your inner being that you bring to the party. We just want to say, and we know that you've been hearing us because we've been after this all day, how much you bring to the party at any point in time is really about how practiced you are to bring your inner being to the party. If you haven't been practicing and you get in a situation where you could really use an inner being at the party, you're not going to be able to let your inner being in because you haven't practiced the vibration that allows that to be. So you want to practice it all day, every day, like the dog does, like the baby does, like you often do. In other words, understand how it works. What are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing vibrationally to the mix? How are you holding the room? What is it that you are contributing? Are you a resistant one, or are you an allowing one? Are you opening the gates to well-being, or are you part of the shutting of them? In other words, what part do you play? And really what you begin to discover is that when you figure out what part you're playing, it doesn't matter what part anybody else plays. Because there's no assertion. No one can keep you out of anything. No one can block your entry into any place. No one can prevent you from the happiness that you deserve. No one can deprive you of what you've asked for and what's in your vortex. No one can keep you from being a vibrational match to all that you've asked for. No one can shut down your receptive mode. Only you see. You're the only one. You have complete control of everything that comes into your experience. You just got to practice it a little bit because you kind of forgot for a while. Enough?
Just